Welcome back to the Strategic Classroom. I am absolutely thrilled you're here for this explainer, because today we are tackling one of the most fascinating concepts in premium military education. We're exploring the critical bridge between grand, overarching strategy and the gritty, boots-on-the-ground reality of tactical combat. It's essentially the invisible glue that holds a massive war effort together. So let's just dive right into this by asking a really fundamental question. Seriously, think about it. How exactly does an idea become a campaign? How does a nation translate a high-level strategic thought, something debated in a quiet room in a capital city, into physical, coordinated military realities on a chaotic battlefield? Well, it absolutely doesn't just happen by accident. Think of warfare kind of like a giant ladder. At the very top, you have strategy, right? Those are your broad national goals. At the very bottom, you have tactics, the nitty-gritty reality of actual fighting. But right in the middle, connecting the two, you have operational art. It addresses that absolutely crucial intermediate span. It's the vital link ensuring that the tactical employment of forces actually achieves those big strategic aims. Because without it, you just have a bunch of disconnected battles. Now, war is a massive whole-of-nation undertaking. Military power is really just one element. It has to work in concert alongside diplomacy, the economy, and information. Military strategy gets its entire impulse directly from national goals. It's the art and science of employing armed forces, or honestly, sometimes even just threatening to use them to protect or further a nation's interests. To really wrap our heads around this concept, we need to look backwards. Over 2 millennia backwards, actually. Sun Tzu laid down a philosophy that is just as incredibly relevant today as it was then. He said, "He will win who, prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared." Victory is deeply, deeply rooted in preparation. It's about being entirely ready yourself and then just waiting for the exact moment your opponent drops the ball. Let's break down those core tenets a bit further, because they are the foundation here. A true master of the art of war knows exactly when to fight, and just as importantly, exactly when not to fight. It's about knowing how to handle both superior and inferior forces seamlessly. You prepare rigorously, you pick your timing flawlessly, you know your enemy inside and out, and you strike precisely where they are weakest. Part 1. The 1962 Sino-Indian War, a case study in operational art. Okay, so the crucial point begins with establishing the political aim. In early October 1962, Mao Zedong actively killed the idea of armed coexistence. The reasoning was purely territorial and strategic. Mao argued that giving ground would be the equivalent of letting the adversary seize a massive chunk of land, literally equal in size to the entire Fujian province. He concluded that, quote, "Not to fight would not be friendly enough." And boom, right there, you have a very clear political aim established at the highest level of strategy. With that strategic goal locked in, the Chinese military had to actually design the campaign. And what's super fascinating here is how they framed it. They masked their offense entirely as a defense, officially calling it a counterattack in self-defense. Plus, they used diplomatic methods to instill this deep sense of justice and morality into their forces. They made the soldiers truly feel they were protecting their people and their nation's glory. It was a brilliantly calculated move to motivate the troops psychologically. The actual mechanics of this campaign design, incredibly strict. First off, they put their most capable general from Western China in charge, a guy known for being wise, brave, and notoriously strict with training, rewards, and punishments. They prepared meticulously, evaluating every single potential advantage and disadvantage long before a single shot was fired. And when they finally moved, they hit fast and hard with human wave assaults, proving they were totally willing to make calculated military gambles against some pretty tough odds. Part 2. Surprise and deception, maximizing psychological shock. To maximize that shock, we are talking about multi-layered deception tactics. The goal wasn't just to win a localized firefight, it was to maximize political and psychological shock by catching the Indian Army completely, 100% off guard. They hid everything: preparation routes, time schedules, distances, even the identities of their own commanders. They spread false rumors, they used spies. Get this. The operational security was so tight that the Chinese commander kept his own soldiers completely in the dark about their true intentions until the very last minute. The sheer scale of this surprise is honestly hard to overstate. When they finally struck, China mounted, calibrated, highly prepared attacks on 2 entirely separate fronts that were almost 2,500 kilometers apart. Executing coordinated surprise across a distance that massive, that is an absolute masterclass in operational planning and logistics. But arguably the most stunning element of this whole case study is the timing. The attack absolutely perfectly coincided with the Cuban Missile Crisis. While the entire globe was holding its breath, terrified of a literal nuclear Armageddon between the US and the Soviets, the invasion occurred. The international spotlight was entirely focused elsewhere, completely cutting off potential sources of outside support. And the very moment the US signaled an end to the standoff with the Soviets, China declared a unilateral ceasefire. The opportunistic timing was mathematically precise. And hey, the timing wasn't just geopolitical, it was geographical too. They executed this massive surprise attack right before winter set in. They actively chose to fight in these harsh, mountainous areas filled with valleys and narrow passes, using that brutal terrain to their operational advantage right before the weather window slammed shut. Part 3. The operational method. Executing the campaign. Out on the battlefield, the mechanics were incredibly systematic. The Chinese forces rolled out specific plans to divide the Indian army into smaller, isolated units. Once they had them divided, they'd concentrate their own forces to ensure they fought every single localized battle with superior numbers. They made lightning-fast decisions and kept a highly detailed watch on the enemy's situation as the whole thing unfolded. Tactical asymmetry was the name of the game here. They combined direct and indirect methods, actively, purposefully avoiding tough, entrenched fights. Instead, they hit undefended positions, and they increased the difficulty for any counterattacks by only defending easily secured positions themselves. On top of that, they always preferred to camp up high, forcing the opponent to quite literally fight an uphill battle. Throughout all of this complex maneuvering, the military aims remained crystal clear. Over in the western sector, the objective was strictly to secure the 1960 claim line. Down in the Khmer Frontier Division, the aim was the total annihilation of the deployed forces. Yet, incredibly, while pursuing these super-aggressive aims, the commanders enforced strict discipline. They explicitly forbade unnecessary destruction, killing, or any inhumane behavior. The violence was heavily controlled and pointed only toward the military objective. Part 4. The end state. Achieving the political result. Here's the real kicker. This war was never meant to be a prolonged struggle. China's decision-makers made every effort to shut the war down as soon as physically possible once the military objectives were met. They declared a unilateral ceasefire because their grand strategy required them to quickly pivot the nation's effort back to economic development. The military tool had done its specific job, it was time to put it back in the toolbox. Ultimately, the whole shebang was waged with a very clear, publicly acknowledged political objective by Beijing: to teach a lesson. The military maneuvers, the intense deception, the brilliant timing, all of it was orchestrated simply to achieve this singular political statement. It just goes to prove that operational art isn't about fighting for the sake of fighting. It always serves the broader national strategy. An idea in a capital city dictates the realities on the ground. It is a complex, calculated, and frankly, fascinating science. Battles are fought tactically, but wars are shaped operationally. So, as you watch modern conflicts unfolding globally today, I want you to ask yourself, what is the true political aim here? And are the operations on the ground actually designed to achieve it?